Food for Thought with Professor David Bitte.
It's another beautiful day. Thank you so much for tuning in. Welcome to another episode of Food for Thought with Professor Ndete. Dissociative identity disorder. That's what we began talking about 2 weeks ago. And we want to go back to that conversation. Very interesting things coming out of this conversation. It's amazing how some things we see, but we never really give thought to it until we begin having this kind of conversations, and then you begin to identify, that sounds common. I've seen that somewhere before. I know somebody who behaves that way. Then everything begins to come together. Let's go back to where we left off this conversation last week.
Bipolar is a totally different condition in the sense that it has got very specific signs and symptoms. By 2 times, sometimes we are very high, sometimes we are very low, and there is a fluctuation. But it's got nothing to do with the memory. Because here we are talking about memory. The research that changed our understanding of hysteria was only the other day. And where the other day, I'm talking about 1970.
Okay.
That's just the other day.
That's the other day.
What happened was that there was a guy called Elliot Slater. He used to work at the Queen's Hospital. Queen's Hospital in London is the topmost hospital for neurology. So all psychiatrists in London, all over the place, they used to refer patients to this guy because it was hysteria. And they wanted to see, and what did this man find? He followed these people for a long time, and he realized that it is true. Some of those patients who were diagnosed with hysteria, it was purely an emotional problem. But there are other people who actually went ahead and developed neurological conditions. In other words, they developed new problems damaging the brain. This is why we are saying
new problems that were not there before.
They were not there, they were not recognized. All we did was to recognize these symptoms, but we didn't quite understand what was behind. Was it purely psychological, or could it have been an organic condition? Organic is when there is brain damage. And Elliot Slater made this famous statement in 1970, which changed everything.
Yes.
He said, the diagnosis of hysteria is a very dangerous snare. Because by just diagnosing hysteria and assuming that is purely psychological, you could be missing. It is a snare, it's a trap. Because you can make that diagnosis and then not realize that is not just emotional or anxiety, it could be the early presentation of a more complicated So that when we see fugue states, we just don't think about depression.
Yes.
We think about other diseases.
Other diseases as well.
Yes.
Okay.
So these are conditions, yes, we are talking about them, but I'm appealing to people to be very, very careful in making those diagnoses and sticking to them. Look for the more primary diagnosis. It's not a diagnosis, it's a symptom. Now you brought up issues of religion.
Religion, yes, I was going to go back there.
There are a condition we call dissociative trance. Trance, trance states. And I think, at least me, I have seen them in my office. And when I used to live, when I was a little boy.
Yes.
Yeah. What you are seeing is, this book that you are seeing is very different. They are in a totally different world. And they will be talking languages that you do not understand. Okay. And I didn't know what was happening, but now in retrospect, I know that happens. I have seen patients here, not very many, maybe 1 or 2, and when I see here, I'm not in this office, but in the course of my professional career, where you get people coming to your office, and they go in some kind of a trance, and they start talking as if they were talking, their level of consciousness alters. We call it trans state. It could be, it can be normal in the sense that many people will recognize this and say, this is normal. When you go into Kilumi as a ceremonial thing, and it was basically a worship and a praise in that religion.
Wow.
I don't want to be controversial.
Yeah. Maybe it should be.
in that religion,
Yeah.
whether it occurs in other religions, whether it occurs in Christianity, I leave to you to decide.
Oh. So when people get into that state of a trance, what are some of the things they do?
A trance state can occur, let me put it in a very simple language, can occur as a part of a religious ritual. And I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
But there are also other situations where these things occur, and you, regardless of your religious background, you can say, no, this is not normal.
Oh.
It's taken out of the culture, taken out of the context. This is not normal.
It's not normal.
And you know, I don't know how many cultures we have in the world. Maybe millions. So different cultural contexts would have this kind of phenomena.
Yeah.
And they would have names for those kind of phenomena. They realize it is not normal. They realize that it is not normal as far as their culture is concerned, and they would call it whatever name they want to call it. So you cannot even think of attempting to name all these different things. And because if, say, I come from Okambani, and if people living in Okambani, they will have a Kamba name.
Yes.
For that phenomenon. So you can't remember all the names, all the tribal or cultural names, but there are some which are also very common and have been described. Let me mention two, which have been described in Africa. I think one of the commonest known is amok. I think everybody say people have gone amok.
Yes.
Yeah, this is amok is a Malaysian name, by the way.
Oh.
And that's where it started, those parts of the world, Malaysia and that part of the world, where people started behaving in a very aggressive manner. They lose themselves and maybe they cannot quite understand. Whether it is a result of anxiety or depression or organic brain damage, we do not know. For the time being, we do not know.
Yeah.
But they see this kind of behavior. One that is which is, I think, there are two of them have been described in Africa, not in Kenya, but one in Africa, in West Africa. One of them is brain fag syndrome, FNG, and you see this. I think we also see it here, and maybe is what we are describing first. Is that when children and we force children, maybe we are seeing a lot of this and we don't know.
Okay.
Do this, achieve this, and you have allowed the child with so much. A time may come when the brain just blocks.
Shut down.
Shut down. No more. Is it possible we see those things here and we don't realize?
I think it is.
I'm asking a question. I'm posing a question. We see these things and we don't realize.
Yeah.
It was first described in West African Nigerian children by a guy called Harris some time back, and this term managed to enter medical literature. And he said it occurs around the time of examinations when children are under a lot of pressure. We see it here, but we don't call it, I think it's there, we don't call it brain fag syndrome. The other one is a condition that used to be once described in West Africa, in the French-speaking countries. I think they call Belle and different dentists, very difficult French names. And basically they were describing the same thing. But now we know these are conditions of anxiety, and we don't see them as much as we used to see them.
Why?
Because we understand. For example, let's talk about our own children here.
Yeah.
We believe that many of them have this condition. We are not going to call it brain fog syndrome. We are going to say this child is stressed.
Yes.
Can we manage the stress?
Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly what I am saying. Yeah. Just because we don't use those terms doesn't mean those conditions don't exist. And even if they existed, they would present in a slightly different way, which we recognize very early, before they go to that level of going in a dissociative state where somebody will walk from Mombasa to Nairobi.
Yes.
Yeah. Where somebody will feel, I'm not myself. Where a person will feel this environment is not real.
Yeah.
If I'm behaving differently, you don't come and say I'm depersonalized.
No.
But you don't say I have a different personality. Come and find out what is stressing me. Come and find out what my psychological problem is.
Yeah.
And like anybody else, like anybody else can have this problem. Nobody is immune from these things. And nobody should boast that I don't develop this condition. It's not a question of one being at higher level of being in control.
Yeah.
We are all human beings. It can happen to anybody. It can happen to you, it can happen to me, it can happen to this, it can happen to anybody who is viewing this.
Now that you say that, I remember there's this gentleman. He would walk. This is back at home. He would walk long distances. And sometimes he's walking and he's having conversations with himself. But he goes and he goes and he goes. And sometimes when he's in that state, he can come and do work for you. Na ni kama hachoki. And it's like baadaye hata kumbuka.
Yes. You see, baadaye hata kumbuka.
Yes.
That is what we are talking about, amnesia. Loss of memory. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, the guy who will be walking around, you see, when you do all of this na hata kumbuka, they want to remember. That qualifies as amnesia. Amnesia is just loss of memory.
Loss of memory.
Yeah, but then it can occur in very many conditions. Stress, part of brain damage, very many things that can. Like for example, when people used to talk about post-traumatic stress disorder, when it was first described, and it was described by the way, just the other day, in 1980. 1980, just the other day. Yeah, when the American Psychological Association. Yeah, when for the first time they started looking at people who had been to Vietnam.
Yes.
And the veterans.
Yes, the veterans.
The veterans. They said there is this new condition which we are seeing. It presents 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and one of them is dissociative disorder. They cannot remember what happened when they were involved in combat in Vietnam.
Too traumatic.
Very traumatic. And this dissociative disorder can be present in very, very dramatic ways. It's like you live, we talk about the realization, this environment looking very different as if you are in another place.
Yeah.
You see, what happened is that, you see, remember I said, you can have the realization. And instead of me believing I am here in this office, I start saying, I am not in my office. Yeah. This has presented in very dramatic ways. I was visiting a place where in the United States where had memorials of people who had been in war, and they told me about a situation where an American is retired, carrying a gun, armed, was walking in a park, and everything seemed perfectly normal. Yeah. Until he saw a Japanese-looking person.
Ooh.
Okay, yeah. And his mind went back there. And you know what he did? He showed that man several times and said, the Japanese are back, the Japanese are back, the Japanese are back.
So for him, he was back in the war.
For him, he was back in the war. So the realization sometimes he can present in a very dramatic way. And then again, for this person, you see, one of the things is post-traumatic stress disorder is like reliving experiences.
Yeah.
You get a reminder or something reminds, and then your mind
takes you back.
takes
It's like
you
you're
back.
there.
Like you are there. This man was fighting the war. And this was during the Second World War when the Japanese and when they were having a war. So for him, he was a very patriotic man.
Okay.
In his mind, here we are back in the war. The Japanese are here. Maliza huyo, enemy.
Our time is up. Once again, thank you for tuning in to Food for Thought with Professor Ndete. Your feedback is welcome on our SMS lines 20316 for SMS and WhatsApp 0786 316 316. If you are watching on TV, I would like to remind you that all the episodes of Food for Thought with Professor Ndete are on our YouTube channel. Head on to YouTube, search for Family Media, subscribe to our channel, search through the content. You will be able to find a playlist with all the episodes of Food for Thought, mental health issues that we've talked about, because these are conversations we need to listen to over and over again. Refer your friends to them. I know they will be helpful. Until next time, thank you for watching. Have a good day.
Food for Thought with Professor David Bitte.